we were discussing the boiling cow, boiling phenomena in the previous class. So you know the basic things about the boiling cow now. One, that it represents or it shows how the heat flux varies with delta excess, that is the temperature difference between the surface and the saturation temperature of the fluid which is being boiled. And this particular graph which is shown to you has been plotted for water, and as you can see, natural convection boiling. So now you know about different regimes of boiling. So in natural convection, saturation temperature of the fluid, like the fluid near the surface getting heated and moving up, and the cold fluid moving down. So it's natural convection boiling without bubbles. Now, when you increase the surface temperature beyond that, what you see is that there are bubbles, but there are individual bubbles, small, and they detach from the surface, hot surface, but then they generally call basically heat up, and beyond around 12-15 degrees, what you find is that the bubbles resurface, right? So now this regime is called nucleate boiling. Okay, this regime is called nucleate boiling. This regime is called nucleate boiling. So in the later part, B to C, the bubbles rise to the if you go further than increase in the heat flux. So point C is the point of maximum heat flux or critical heat flux. So at that point you get the maximum at a temperature T excess of around 30 degrees, you get the maximum heat flux. Right, it is exceeding 10 raised to 6, so even more than 1 megawatt per meter square. Now, if that something happens, what is happening is that when you increase the excess temperature, rather than increase in the heat flux, there is a the reason for this is that actually you have entered into the transition. Here what is happening is that the generation rate of bubbles is so high, and are able to merge together, that the bubbles become very large in size and start covering very large area of the heater or heating surface. So vapor is not a good for heat transfer, rather it works as an insulation, you can say. So because of that, rather than increase in the heat flux starts decreasing as you keep or maintain your temperature higher than the maintain your temperature higher than 30°C. Okay, so that goes on decreasing and reaches a minimum point, and then after certain point your heat flux again start increasing. Okay. I'm getting the message that the voice is cutting, but like it's because of the poor connectivity from the supplier side, so I may not be able to help. The lecture is being recorded, so you may have to watch it later in case the things are not clear. So you reach the point of the minimum heat flux is Leidenfrost frost point, and after that the radiation starts contributing to the increase in the further heat flux. So because of that you are able to go on increasing this so Sagar, what should we do? You tell me. So uh, this leaden from beyond that point, if you increase the temperature further, you are able to increase the heat flux mainly because of the radiation also now contributing and to the increase in the heat transfer rate. Okay, so the that regime continuous film which is covering the heater surface. So because of that uh, you because of that it continuously provides a kind of resistance to the flow, but because of the increase in the radiative heat transfer you are still able to increase the heat flux. Now there is a certain limit up to which you can increase the temperature because you might reach the melting point of the metal which you are using for heating. So at that point, means beyond that point, you may not be able to go because the heater itself will burn down, right? So you will not be able to go beyond that. Actually, there is a video which is showing the boiling crisis, as it is called. That is when the temperatures are high enough, and even in transition boiling, if the temperature of the surface, that is, if you try to go beyond this, in case of water, if you try to go like this, okay, it may happen that it may jump to point E, and after that the heater may burn, right? Because the temperature has become very high. Okay, the reason for that is that uh, this curve that you get is can be found, or can the points on that can be found only if your system is temperature controlled system. If it is a heat flux controlled system, you will not be able to get this curve that is from C to D. What will happen is it will jump directly from C to E, and then you can go further. Okay, so why would it happen? So in which case are you able to get the full curve? In which case you will not be able to get the full curve? As I told, if your system or experimental setup is such that you are able to maintain the required temperature difference, that is, if I am able to set it at 5, it should be able to keep the temperature difference always equal to 5. Right. Similarly, if I set it at 20, it should be able to maintain the temperature difference equal to 20. Then I will get a particular heat flux. Then if I set it at, let's say, 50, I will get this heat flux, right? But the system should be able to maintain that temperature, right? The control should be like that. But many times the experiments are done which are heat flux controlled. Okay, heat flux controlled. So what does it mean? That is actually a more common thing. What you do many times, for example, say in case of the experiment in which you find the thermal conductivity of the metal rod, what you do is you supply the heat from one side, and then there is a temperature gradient created over the length of the cylinder, and you measure the temperatures at different points, etc. Okay, so this that is also a heat flux controlled experiment. So what you are able to change there is change the voltage and current, and because of that you are changing the heat, the rate at which the heat is supplied. Okay. So even in these boiling experiments, you may change the rate at which the heat is being supplied, and the area remains the same. So you are basically changing the heat flux. So if you perform the experiment like that, then as you increase the heat flux, you will see that the surface temperature goes on increasing. But once it reaches this point, once you reach this heat flux, 10 raised to 6, 1.3 into 10 raised to 6 roughly, you may notice that right now the temperature difference is 30. But then if you try to increase the heat flux further, what you may find is that the heat flux increases, but there is a sudden temperature jump, right? If your metal is such that it is able to withstand this temperature beyond this is 1000 and this is log scale. So if it is able to withstand uh, such a high temperature, then you will jump from C to E, and you will be you can increase the heat flux further, and you will get the temperature difference corresponding to what you see on the horizontal axis. So you won't be able to get the points in this area, okay, if it is a heat flux controlled experiment. The experiment, heat flux controlled experiment, may be done in the reverse direction also. So in that case, what will happen? You may start with, let's say, 1000 degrees Celsius, or let's say this heat flux, a particular heat flux, or you may even start at much higher heat flux. Let's say this heat flux, which you cannot get it in these regimes. So you may start with a very high heat flux. You have a very high temperature difference. You go on decreasing the heat flux. So in that case, it will move on this line. You will reach this point where the heat flux is quite low, but still the temperature difference is 120. Then if you reduce the heat flux further, it's not going to move like this for the cooling curve. It will jump directly from D to the point between A and B. And then if you further decrease the heat flux, you will see that the temperature is further decreasing. So there'll be a jump in temperature. If you do the heat flux controlled experiment, you won't get the full curve. While you go for the heating curve, you jump from C to E, and then you can move further. And if you are going for a cooling curve, you start from this point, you go on, it goes on decreasing and jumps from D to a point between A and B. So in a heat flux controlled experiment, you don't get the full curve. The full curve one can plot only if it is a temperature controlled experiment. Okay. So when Yukiyama initially tried to draw the curve with the help of by having a heat flux controlled system, what he found is that he is able to reach near C or reach at point C, but then because he used nichrome wire initially, which doesn't have very high melting temperature, he found that the heater wire burnt, and he was not able to get anything beyond point C, right? So then he did the experiments with platinum wire, which has much higher much higher melting point. So in that case, what he found is that if he further increases the heat flux beyond point C, then it jumps directly to this part, and the film boiling is seen, and he is still able to get this line where you get heat flux is higher than the critical heat flux. So this is about how you can one can perform the experiment, and how one can get the full curve. Different regimes of boiling have been discussed, it is like application point of view, one would always like to work in the nucleate boiling regime, right? Because there you get the very high heat fluxes as well as the chances of damage to the surface are least. Right? So you will work in the nucleate boiling and also try to remain a bit away from the critical heat flux. Right? So operate at some safely lower temperature than the temperature at the critical heat flux point. Now, if you are interested in solving the problems about the heat transfer, what is the heat transfer rate that you get in case of nucleate boiling, any analytical solution is not possible because the physical phenomena is not completely understood. So you have to depend upon the correlations developed by the scientists or the researchers. So if you are in the nucleate boiling regime, then there is a correlation presented or provided by Rosenau as early as 1952. There could be even later later correlations which are available, but one of the earliest one was by Rosenau, and that has been shown here. And it actually directly gives you the heat transfer rate. So heat transfer rate is uh, rather it is heat flux. Okay, so that's you already have this Ts minus T saturated here. Okay, so you would get the heat transfer rate with the help of this equation or correlation. So what are the different terms which are seen in this correlation? And mind well, these correlations are not very accurate. Uh, they can have as error as high as 100% in some cases. Right? It is stated that if you know the temperature difference and you are trying to predict Q dot, then the error could be as high as 100%. In the reverse case, if you know the heat flux and you want to find out the temperature difference, the error might be lower. So the number that you get, you can't depend, you can't say that it is the perfect number and I must get that heat transfer rate. You can always expect very high deviation from that. Okay, this is true for any experimental correlation. There is always going to be some error band, but particularly in boiling, that band is very wide. So Q dot nucleate is the nucleate boiling heat flux in watt per meter square. Then you see this viscosity. So some of the properties are that of liquid and some others are that of vapor. So mu L is viscosity of the liquid in kg per meter second. And then HFG is the enthalpy of vaporization, G gravitational acceleration, rho L is the density of liquid, rho V is the density of vapor, kg per meter cube. Sigma is surface tension of liquid vapor interface, Newton per meter. CPL is the specific heat of liquid. Then Ts is the surface temperature of the heater. T saturation is the saturation temperature of the fluid. And CSF, that is the experimental constant that depends on surface fluid combination. Right. So here you will have to refer tables which provide you the value of CSF, which is a constant depending upon the which surface, like whether it is a copper water combination or it is steel water combination or it is water and or it is steel and ethanol, or so what kind of combination is there. The CSF value has been given based on the experience or experiments. Then the Prandtl number of the liquid and again one more experimental constant is there which depends upon the fluid. So this is perhaps the most important correlation for the boiling phenomena because it is for the nucleate boiling where one might want to operate the system. There are correlations for the other rather other boiling regimes also, but they are comparatively of low interest. So we may not go much into that. There is a correlation for the peak heat flux also, that is the critical heat flux. Then there is a correlation for the minimum heat flux, that is that Leidenfrost point also. So this value of C and N, as you can see in this table, table 10.1, that actually gives the surface tension of liquid vapor interface for water at different temperatures. And 10.2 is for surface tension for other fluids. Then 10.3 gives you the value of CSF, right? What appeared in the correlation for the nucleate boiling. So water copper CSF is 0.0130, N is 1. Okay. So depending upon the combination, these two variables, you have to take the different values from this table. This table gives you only a few combination. You might have other tables which are very elaborate. Then the correlation for the minimum heat flux or the Leidenfrost point. As I told, we are interested in only the correlation uh, for the nucleate boiling, the heat transfer rate or heat flux in case of nucleate boiling. There is even correlation for the film boiling. In film boiling, actually there are two different phenomena. One, the boiling, and the other one is the radiative heat transfer. So it is found that they actually are not fully supporting each other. Okay, so you don't take the full value of the radiative heat transfer, but you take only 3/4 of that. And boiling provides you very high heat transfer coefficients, but still, if one wishes to go even beyond that, there could be different measures which may be taken, and that generally, like when it is a rough surface, it provides you more nucleate sites, right? More points at which the bubbles are generated, and you can expect a high heat transfer rate if the surface on which the boiling is occurring is rough. But then sometimes what happens is that the crevices in that, because of some impurities, may get filled up. So because of that, over a period of time, it may start giving you heat transfer rates equivalent to a smooth surface. So there are some commercial uh, efforts, or technical and commercial efforts also done to increase the heat transfer rate in case of the boiling. And there is one example is given here. A particular material, Thermo XLE, has been developed by some company, and it is claimed that at same temperature difference you get higher heat fluxes as compared to the plain tube or even finned tube. But then over a period of time, it should continue giving higher performance. So one example on nucleate boiling is given here. You may go through and understand that example. And example point of view, this might be enough for your undergraduate course. So we may not go into the problems where the other type of or other boiling regimes are coming into picture. So here it's not very difficult to solve the problem. Mainly you have to get the properties of the fluid and from the required tables, and put those properties in the correlation which is available with you. So here water is to be boiled at atmospheric pressure in a mechanically polished stainless steel pan placed on top of heating unit as shown in the figure. the inner surface of the bottom of the pan is maintained at 108. So there is a temperature difference of 8 degree Celsius. If diameter of the bottom of the pan is 30 centimeter, determine A, rate of heat transfer to water, and B, the rate of evaporation of water. So first thing is you have to get various properties. So properties of water at saturation temperature 100 degrees Celsius are found, and this is the surface tension 0.059 Newton per meter. Other properties, the density of liquid, density of vapor. So 100 degrees saturate this is saturated liquid, and rho V, when you say it is saturated vapor. So those properties are you are taking, like if it is available in the steam table, if the volume is available, you take the inverse of that, and that will give you the density, particularly in case of vapor. Then what is HFG? That is latent heat of vaporization at 100 degrees Celsius. So that's 2257 into 10 raised to 3 joule per kilogram. So you have to be careful while putting the units, because the table give you 2257 kilojoule. So don't put kilojoule directly into the correlation. Otherwise, the answer will not be correct. So all unit should be at par with one another. Then the the dynamic viscosity of liquid and Cp of liquid. So that is also you put in joule per kg Kelvin. And then from the table, you get CSF and N. So CSF is 0.0130 and N is equal to 1 for water and stainless steel combination. So you have all required values for the correlation. Now you can just put the values in the correlation, and you should be able to, with the right calculation, you should be able to get the right answer. Okay, so heat flux is found to be 7.21 into 10 raised to 4 or 72.1 kilowatt per meter square. That's the heat flux. Now how much is the area of the surface? You multiply it with that and you get 5097 watts. So that is roughly 5.1 kilowatt. Right? That's the heat transfer rate that you get. Okay. So for 30 centimeter vessel, this is quite a high heat transfer rate that you are getting. And then what is the evaporation rate? You just divide the heat transfer rate by the latent heat of vaporization. So you get the evaporation, or rather boiling rate or evaporation rate. So you get 2.26 into 10 to minus 3 kg per second, right? So you may get it in kg per hour. So in that case, it will it will be a sizable number, or it is around 2.2 grams per second, right? Okay. So this is about the boiling heat transfer phenomena, heat transfer rate, different boiling regimes, some understanding about those regimes, the pool boiling curve, and one example on the nucleate boiling. Now there is another type of boiling which one may come across in engineering systems, and that is flow boiling. So here there is a flow of liquid while boiling is occurring. So you can have a look at the curve or the chart shown here. This is delta T excess, similar to your boiling curve, and Q dot, the heat flux. And when there is no flow, that is pool boiling, the lowest curve is followed. This is nothing but your boiling curve for the pool boiling, the lower one, the one which is at the bottom. But it is seen that if the fluid is flowing, or it is made to flow, okay, generally there will be some external agency. So like boiling is occurring as I gave the example of uh, the evaporator of a refrigeration system. So the evaporator of your air conditioner or evaporator of your uh, uh, domestic refrigerator. So there is a compressor which is continuously sucking the vapor from the evaporator. Okay, so because of that, there is a continuous flow of the refrigerant. So there is some velocity induced. Or if you take the example of a boiler, then there is a pump which is continuously pushing the liquid, and then it is passing through the boiler tubes, and in the boiler tubes there is boiling of partial boiling of water taking place. So in such systems, if the velocity is low, then what you see is particularly at low delta T excess, okay, lower temperature difference between the surface and the saturation temperature, even for low delta T excess, you are able to get quite high heat fluxes as compared to the pool boiling case. And at high velocity, it is even higher. So higher the velocity, it is going to, like even at the same delta T excess, you are able to get higher heat fluxes. So it will be it will be advantageous with the same area and same delta T excess, you are able to get higher heat transfer rates. What is seen is that near critical heat flux, uh, when this curve becomes very steep, at that time there is not a very high difference in the delta T excess for a given heat flux, right? So it doesn't make a big difference in this area. But then there is a like again a difference coming up in the heat flux, the critical heat flux, and beyond that. Okay. So higher velocities will always help you get higher heat transfer coefficients in case of flow boiling as compared to the pool boiling. So as it is mentioned here, some heat fluxes as high as 35 megawatt per meter square are also have been achieved. So basically it's a kind of combination of the internal flow or convective heat transfer as well as the two-phase flow or boiling, and this combined effect gives you very high heat transfer coefficient. Now if you want to analyze the phenomena, you may have to combine the effect, see the combined effect of both the phenomena, but we will not go into details of that in this undergraduate course. Only thing that we will look at is again different regimes in flow boiling. So you can have a look at the figure here, and there is a vertical tube shown, and there is a fluid which is passing through that, or it is pumped through that tube, and the temperature of the surface of the tube is high enough that the boiling occurs inside the tube. Okay, so this can be a vertical tube in a boiler, and there is a continuous flow of water through this tube. The temperature of the surface is high enough that the boiling is occurring. Initially, when the water enters near or enters a subcooled liquid, till it reaches its till it reaches its saturation temperature, there is subcooled boiling which might happen, but basically it's forced convection which is happening because it is a single phase. Then what you find is that there are bubbles generated, but because of the flow of the liquid, they are dragged into the core region of the tube. So they are dragged into the liquid core. As they are generated, they are dragged into the liquid core. So actually this phenomena is helping the bubbles to detach from the surface, and that's why you get high heat transfer rates. And this type of flow is called, this flow regime is called bubbly flow. Now, beyond that, what you find is that now there are more bubbles and they are also able to merge together. So you see bigger size bubbles. So it's called slug flow. The bubbles, their sizes is big enough, kind of slug. So it is called slug flow. Now, when this boiling is occurring, more and more fraction of the liquid is getting converted into vapor. Okay, so because of that, you see that the vapor fraction is increasing and the liquid fraction is continuously going down. So beyond a certain point, so you can also see this quality, this axis shown on the chart on the left hand side. So quality is 0 here when it is a single phase, and it's going to get converted into vapor, complete phase change. So the quality is continuously increasing along the height of the tube. Okay. So x is equal to 0 here and x equal to 1 here. And there is also another curve which is shown here, which is actually nothing but coefficient of heat transfer. And it is high on this side and low on this side. So the heat transfer coefficient is increasing continuously as like in bubbly flow, it is comparatively lower. Slug flow, it is even it is higher. It's continuously increasing. In annular flow also, it is high. Now, what is annular flow? The vapor fraction is high enough, and that is making, that vapor is making the core of the tube, and you have liquid as a film which is surrounding the boundary, okay, which is in contact with the, which is in contact with the surface, right? And bubble generation and detachment of the bubble, and then that vapor merging with the vapor core is continuously happening. So you can see how it is shown, that is this core region is comparatively smaller here and it is continuously increasing. So that's annular flow. Now when this vapor is generating, the velocity is also increasing, right? The liquid is still in good contact with the surface. So that's why you are getting very high heat fluxes in even in the annular flow. Now beyond that, there is transition flow, something similar to the transition flow in a in pool boiling also. So what is happening is that now liquid is quantity or fraction is not high enough. So what might happen is at some places you may find that there is vapor, there is a liquid film which is in contact or clinging to the surface, but then other places the surface is exposed to vapor, but then again that surface may get covered by liquid some at some point of time, and the surface which was like covered with liquid may get exposed to vapor. So there is a transition continuously of dynamic, very dynamic phenomena happening. So that's transition flow. So during this flow, because now large fraction of the surface is being covered by the vapor, which is a bad convector and conductor, so the heat transfer coefficient drops drastically in this transition flow and reaches a minimum value. Now beyond transition flow, what you find is that there is nothing like bubbles or nothing like a film of liquid, but liquid is now in the form of mist, right? A small liquid particles are still present, so that's mist flow. And beyond a certain point, even that mist, because of the higher temperature, the mist also gets evaporated and becomes completely becomes or converts into vapor. And beyond that, it is actually a single phase convection case, so it's forced convection. But then the velocity is high, so you might see some rise in the heat transfer coefficient, right? So because the vapor density is low, the velocity is going to increase and Reynolds number increases. So because of that, you may see a bit increase in the heat transfer rate, but still it's not very high. Okay, so this is about various flow regimes in flow boiling, and what is how the behavior or the physical phenomena occurring in various regimes, how they are characterized, and what is the vapor fraction in uh, or vapor fraction range for each zone, and what is the heat transfer coefficient. So all these qualitative information has been given in this chart. So just a basic understanding of the forced convective boiling case or flow boiling case is given here, and that is good enough for the undergraduate course you are going through. So after boiling we will talk about condensation, but I think we will take that in the next class.